Content warning. The stories and themes shared throughout this podcast may contain themes that can be distressing for you. If needed, please pause and do what you need to do to take care of yourself. If needed, please reach out to a mental health professional for support.
Welcome back to another episode of Resilient AF with Blair and Alana. But today we do not have Alana. We have Edie. Is it Edie? I should have
Edie?
checked. Edie.
Yep.
Edie Weinstein. I have a best friend with the last name Weinstein. We need to chat and see if there's a relation. Do you have any relatives in Winnipeg, Manitoba?
No, I don't.
Oh,
And the
okay.
interesting thing is, I always tell people it's pronounced Weinstein, not Weinstein like Harvey. So you can keep that in here. That's fine.
Okay.
Weinstein, and it's easy to remember because it rhymes. But no, I don't have.
Weinstein. I like it. Edie Weinstein, not
Yep, there you go.
Weinstein, but I have friends with Weinstein that spelt the same, so that's interesting.
Mhm.
Well, she is super fascinating. She's a licensed social worker, therapist, interfaith minister, speaker, journalist, and book author. And once upon a time, she was the host of a podcast called All About Relationships.
Mhm.
And today we are sitting here. She is in the States, I'm up in Canada, and we're here to talk about your story, your
Mhm.
story of resilience. And so just so the listeners out there know, when I ask guests to share, like, what do we want to talk about or share when you've had to be resilient, sometimes I get one sentence, sometimes I get a paragraph, and some of us are dealt some difficult cards. And we're going to dive into Edie's story. And I'm just going to, share some of the things that she shared with me that she had an ectopic pregnancy in 92. She lost
Mhm.
her home in Hurricane Andrew in Florida. In the exact same year, her husband was diagnosed with Hep C, and then 6 years later, he died from end-stage liver disease.
Mhm.
She was widowed, became a single mom at 40, and then her dad passed away, and then her mom died a few years later. And you had a heart attack at 55, and a whole bunch of other really terrible things.
And a whole bunch of really wonderful things in the meantime, which is
Let's
part
talk
of the
about it.
story. Yeah,
So
yeah.
let's talk about the dual. I think that's really important because there is this duality. Um, I had a lot of loss, and people often look at everything I'm doing now that I've built from turning my pain into purpose, and they forget about all the really hard things,
Hmm.
right?
Yep.
And they're like,
Yep.
wow, your life's amazing. I want your life. No, you don't. Maybe you do, but like, no, you don't. And
Mhm.
like, I think people forget. And that's the same thing as like when things are so hard, what is also that good that's woven within?
Right. And the important thing is not to do a spiritual bypass and say, oh, yeah, my life is wonderful. None of that other stuff matters anymore. It all comes together. Imagine a big silver mixing bowl
Yeah.
and you put in all of the ingredients. Some taste really yucky, but they're in there. We don't really have a choice. And we have to figure out what to add to it to sweeten it up, to make it more palatable, to make it more nourishing. So things happen. I had a client many years ago who asked the question, what do you do when life gets lifey? And you do what you can. You do the best that you can with the ingredients that you have. When I grew up in a very loving, nurturing, supportive home, so I got a head start to help me deal with all these things. My parents, God bless them, taught me about how to be resilient. They taught me about how to bounce back from challenges. They never anticipated all these challenges. They went through the hurricane with me. They lived in Florida at the time. They were living in Fort Lauderdale, and we were able to stay with them for a few weeks after the hurricane while we were looking for another place to live. I'm from the Philadelphia area originally, and my husband and I had moved down to Florida because we'd published a magazine called Visions, had to do with holistic health and wellness. And we wanted to start a second regional edition in South Florida. So we hightailed it down there. My parents had already been there for a year, and the joke is they retired at 65 and ran away from home. They moved. So we followed them. And as much as I loved being near my parents, I didn't love South Florida. It wasn't a hospitable business climate. I missed the change of seasons. And even though we found community there, I missed our friends up here.
Hmm.
So 1992 is what I lovingly call our year from hell. I had the ectopic in March. For those who don't know what that is, the you know, I didn't even know I was pregnant at the time, but the fetus develops in the fallopian tube, which is not meant to carry a little person, and the fallopian tube ruptured, and I almost hemorrhaged to death. And I think of this now again, how many years later, that if this was Florida in our present times, I could be dead. Right? So I'm grateful that Roe v. Wade was in place. So that was March. In May of that year, Michael was diagnosed with hepatitis C. In August of that year, we lost our home to Hurricane Andrew in Homestead, ground zero for the hurricane. And the following year, we moved back up north. He's from this area as well. And life just changed because he was ill. It was a chronic illness, and we had our magazine, which we eventually sold the same year that he died in 1998. At the time, I was working as a nursing home social worker, and I loved it, but it was too far from home. It was an hour and 15 minutes each way. So when he was in the ICU in a coma, waiting for a liver transplant, um, I went through, I call it a dark night of the soul, a spiritual reclamation, reintegration, whatever you want to call it. And I did a lot of what I called Godversations, where I talked to what I call the God of my understanding. And I would ask questions like, what am I supposed to do here? We had hoped that he was going to get a liver transplant, that he never did. How am I going to raise a child by myself? It was absolutely unthinkable. My son was 11 at the time. And I just kept getting reassurances that it was all going to be okay, no matter what the outcome. I had incredibly supportive family and friends, who I still do, and grateful for that. And literally, um, when Michael died, we turned off life support. I heard the voice say, call the seminary and finish what Michael started. And I knew exactly what that meant. A year prior, when he was still lucid and out of the hospital more than in the hospital, he enrolled in the new seminary, which is a school in New York that ordains interfaith clergy. And he was the one going to school. I had no intention of it, didn't have the time, didn't have the money, didn't have the interest. But because he was sick, I would study with him. He had neuropathy in his hands, so I would type his papers. He would fall asleep while he was reading, so I would read to him. I would sit in on the phone calls. I would watch the videos with him. No clue why. Well, that day I found out why. So after his service, I called the seminary and I talked to the dean, Diane Burke is her name, and she said, "You're more than welcome to join us and graduate with Michael's class on two conditions. One is that you're doing this for yourself too, not just for him. And the other is that if you want to graduate this year, you have to do the first and second year's work simultaneously or wait till next year." I said, "Nah, going to do it." So while I was raising my son, while I was still working at the nursing home, I studied, and it was part of my healing. So in June of 1999, I walked down the aisle at the Cathedral of St. John the Divine. Are you familiar with it?
I am not. Maybe you should share with our listeners.
It is in New York City, and it's the largest Gothic cathedral in the Western Hemisphere. It is so huge that they neither heat it nor air condition it because it would be outrageously expensive. So the day we got ordained, it was 90 something degrees. And I waited till the last minute to put my robe on. And even then, I could feel the sweat trickling down. It was an incredible experience. My parents came up from Florida. And the really interesting part of it was that when I told my mother that I was going to seminary, she said, "I have one question for you. Are you converting?" I was raised Jewish, and that would have been, there's a Yiddish word shanda, which is a shame, a big shame. And I said, "No, I'm not converting. I'm expanding my spiritual beliefs." She said, "Okay, as long as it makes you happy, we support you and we'll be there." So after I was ordained, she started calling me her Reverend daughter, like Reverend Mother, and I became the family clergy. I officiated at two family weddings. I officiated both my parents' services because I didn't want a rabbi who didn't know them to deliver their eulogies. So I again became, the family go-to person. So that was 1992 into 1998.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's a
quite an
really
experience.
heavy, wild,
Yeah.
beautiful, sad
Mhm.
6 years
All the things, all the things, all at once.
all at
So that
once.
was I don't even know what to call it that, that I made it. It could be a stew, it could be chili, it could be a cake, I don't know. But
Yeah.
it's got mixed together.
So that all happened. And so you become a reverend. At the
Mhm.
same time, you were also a social worker.
Mhm.
How did you balance everything?
I've learned to multitask. I've pretty sure I have undiagnosed ADHD. And my brain is always thinking and like, okay, what can I do next? And that's literally how I worked my way into a heart attack, is that I try to take on everything all at once. I wasn't sleeping well. I sacrificed sleep. For 2 years prior to the heart attack, which happened in 2014, a few years after my parents' deaths, I slept maybe 5 or 6 hours a night, and I worked 12 to 14-hour days, partly because I had left a job that I had for 12 years, not the nursing home job. I worked in a psychiatric hospital and working with pretty acutely ill and chronically ill clients and patients. And I realized that the most self-loving thing I could do would be to quit my job.
Mm.
And I quit it before I found another job, which was totally against my mother's advice. She said, always have a job before you leave one. And if you don't have a job, your job is to find a job. So I did. And I patchworked together a few different things. I worked at an outpatient drug and alcohol program, working with people with addictions. And here I was addicted to work. It wasn't just strong, solid work ethic. It was literally an addiction. I was terrified that I wasn't going to be able to support myself and my son.
Mm.
But here we are. He's 38. I'm 67. I'm still in the same house that my husband and I had bought after the hurricane. Took care of it all myself, working however many jobs. And I've learned the art of balancing because nobody can be all things to all people. Nobody can do it all at the same time. I don't know if you're old enough to remember. Did you ever watch the Ed Sullivan Show? You know,
I'm born in 85, so
okay,
I've never seen that show, but I know
okay.
what it is. I know what it is.
Okay. So it's a variety show for those
Yeah.
who don't know. And there was this person who was on a few times, Eric Bren or Brem, something like that. And his act was spinning plates. Like he'd have all these wooden
Yeah.
dowels, and he'd spin plates and he'd spin bowls, he'd spin cups. That's what my life was for a gazillion years until I started dropping them. And literally, when I was in the hospital with a heart attack, one of the first thoughts was, oh my God, what did you do to yourself? And what I say now, 11 years later, is that the woman that I was died that day to give birth to the one that's talking to you now. And
Hmm.
she had to die because she was killing me. No, I didn't die. My heart didn't stop. But the craziness had to stop.
Yeah. And so, like, was it the heart attack that woke you up, or was it,
Mhm. Yep.
And so what does your life look like now? Because you are fairly accomplished. You've
Mhm.
survived a lot of highs and lows.
Mhm.
You're still working.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Can't afford to retire unless I win the lottery or something, somebody leaves me a lot of money. Um, so what it looks like now, I'm working full time as a therapist in a group psychotherapy practice, which I love. I make my own hours. 2 days a week, I'm in the office. The other days I work from home, where I am right now. Welcome to my home office. Yeah. Um, and I write. I do. I never had a congregation as a minister. Never wanted to. Didn't want to deal with the politics of it. And people contact me and ask me to officiate at various ceremonies and rituals. And I
Yeah.
do I do public speaking. In 2022, I did a TED Talk called "Overcoming the Taboo of Touch," based in part on a project or I don't even know what to call it, a paper that I did in graduate school. And another I don't even know what to call this. It's not really a project, it's a passion that I have called Hug Mobsters Armed with Love.
Okay. We
And I
need to
said,
talk about this.
yeah,
What
yeah,
is, okay, what's
okay,
your TED Talk about Hug
okay,
Monsters? Let's talk about this because I
okay,
had no idea, and this is really interesting to me.
okay. I thought I'd say you that, but okay. In 2014, a few months before the heart attack, Valentine's Day weekend, 2014, I brought a group of friends to 30th Street Station, which is a big train station in Philly, to
Yeah.
do a free hugs flash mob. I had heard about the free hugs movement a few years earlier, and I thought, Day weekend would be a really good time to do it, but not on Valentine's Day directly, the day after, because I wanted people to understand that Valentine's Day isn't just one day of the year, it's every day, and that it's not just for romantic partners. Love is for everybody. So between the 12 of us, we unleashed ourselves for an hour in 30th Street Station. And one of our friends is a musician who walked around playing the Supertramp song, Give a Little Bit.
Yeah.
You know that one,
Hmm.
give a little bit of your love to me. And we estimated we hugged about 200 people. And my favorite part of the story is that one of the people who approached us was an Iraq war vet, and he was the only survivor of his platoon, and he had survivor's guilt. And he said he thought about ending his life. He said, until I met you people, you give me hope. Can I join you? So, of course, we gave him his own little free hug sign, and he was off to the races hugging people. Now, all these years later, I have no clue what happened to him, but my prayer is that he's out there in the world finding his purpose and making a big difference. And I thought, wow, hugs save lives. So friends started calling us hug mobsters, flash mob, hug mob.
Yeah.
And, ooh, mobsters, guns, drugs,
I
violence.
know.
Not very
Taking back the
warm.
word.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I said, what about the tagline, armed with love? And that's what it's been since then. Some of one of the hug mobsters created a logo. It was just a little heart with hands. Now
Oh,
this came from IKEA. A friend
yeah, I was
gave
gonna
me.
say that looks like the IKEA heart.
Yep, yep, yep. But that's what our logo is. So I hadn't realized how true that thought was that hugs save lives, because in June of that year, June 12th, I'm sorry, June 12th, 2014 is when I had the heart attack. As part of my cardiac rehab, I walked around my little nearby town of Doylestown, Pennsylvania, and doing free hug strolls. And I thought, combining hugging with walking is going to be good for me emotionally and physically, and it's going to be a good way to connect with my community. So I estimate that since then, I've hugged thousands of people in the United States, in Canada. I have friends that are in Port Hope. Do you know that town?
Sounds familiar.
Yep. So I went there to visit friends there a couple years ago. And then in 2018, I hugged my way through Ireland. That was my trip of a lifetime, was to Ireland in 2018. So I had my free hug sign and walked around asking people if they wanted hugs, and a lot of them did. So
I love that.
yeah, and I'd wanted to do a TED Talk for ages. And I thought, what would be a good subject? And this was, what was that, 2022, smack dab in the middle of the pandemic.
Hmm.
So people were freaking out about, myself included, not what if we can't ever touch again? What if we can't ever hug again?
Hmm.
Everything was so uncertain. So when I pitched my talk to a stage in Ohio, and it's, by the way, there's a difference between a TED Talk and a TEDx talk. TED is like I call it Big TED, is the main headquarters. TEDx are the smaller venues all over the world. So this was a TEDx talk in Ohio. And I think the theme was humanity. And I thought, oh, this would be perfect.
Yeah.
So that's what the talk was. And if people want to find it, just look up Edie Weinstein, Overcoming the Taboo of Touch. And it was so much fun. It was participatory, call and response singing, asking them questions about how often they hug. And it was
Yeah.
a blast. I loved it. So I do it now any and everywhere I can.
I love
And,
that. Do you
yep.
still gather at the train station for like a big communal hug event?
Not done at the train station again. In fact, we got scolded by a police officer He said, you really should have a permit to do this. And I said, then it wouldn't be a flash mob. You
But you
know?
need a permit to hug people?
Yeah, yeah. But I said, we're not he called it soliciting. I said, we're not soliciting. We're not asking them for money. We're
Yeah.
not touching them without their consent, because that's a huge part of it, that it's consent education as well. I don't hug anybody without their permission. So I'm not going to do it there, but I've done it at other places. I go to Pride Fests.
Yeah.
The other things I do is free mom hugs. Have you ever heard of that?
Free mom
Free
hugs?
mom hugs. Yep.
No, but I would love one.
Yep.
Hmm.
Oh, free mom hugs was started probably around the time of Hug Mobsters. The woman who founded it is Sarah, Sara Cunningham, and she's in Oklahoma City. She was a devout Christian whose son came out to her as a gay man.
Mm-hmm.
It freaked her out. She thought, oh my God, I have to choose between God and my son. And she had a dark night of the soul. And then she realized, I don't have to choose. So she left her church, became ordained as a minister herself, and officiates at same-sex weddings. And she's also a stand-in mom at same-sex weddings.
Oh,
Like, if your mom won't be there, I'll be there and I'll bring the bubbles. So the day that her group was founded, her son Parker had invited her to a Pride Fest in Oklahoma City. She made a little button that said free mom hugs, stuck it on, and offered hugs to people there. And by the end of the experience, she said she was covered with tears and glitter.
oh,
And she realized she had a movement on her hands.
yeah.
So if people want to look it up, freemomhugs.org.
Yeah.
You don't have to be a mom to, I am a mom and I'm a grandmom, but you don't have to be a mom. There are also free dad hugs.
Yeah.
You
I
just
love
have to be
that.
willing to
Okay, I have
participate.
a question for you.
Yep,
Do
sure.
you remember the first stranger you hugged?
Mm. Mm. Well, when we first, I don't remember the first stranger I hugged at 30th Street Station, but the vet was the most memorable. So he wasn't the first, but I don't remember the first stranger I hugged. Couldn't tell you. But I can tell you that that he stayed with me in my heart. He
Yeah.
and another vet, actually. I don't know how many years ago I went to a veterans homeless shelter in a neighborhood in Philadelphia called Kensington, which is known as a big drug area. So friends and I went to this veterans homeless shelter, and I did a mini hug workshop talking about the importance of nurturing touch by consent. And as I was hugging this one man, he said, I haven't been touched, not just hugged, I haven't been touched in 20 years.
Oh my gosh.
So of course I hugged him longer. Yeah.
Oh,
Give a little extra.
there's just something about like a hug, even like a quick hug, but like a good juicy hug, like with
Yep.
intention.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
we're
When I
we're
hug
we're
people,
wired for that human connection and
that's
human
exactly it.
touch.
We're hardwired for touch. Our skin is our single biggest organ.
Hmm.
And you've heard stories about babies failing to thrive if they're in orphanages where they don't get enough touch. Grown-ups fail to thrive too. High incidence of depression, anxiety, loneliness, suicidality, addiction comes from, in part, not getting enough nurturing touch by consent.
Yeah.
So I encourage everybody to do that, to go out there, ask, some people are not comfortable hugging strangers, but if they say no to a hug, I'll say, that's okay, hug somebody, even yourself. And
Yeah.
during the pandemic, I would do virtual hugs. I'd walk around town with my mask on, and I say, can we do a virtual hug where I hug me, you hug you, and it's like we're hugging each other.
Yeah. I think that's really beautiful. So, as we wrap up today, we talked about a lot of things. I mean, you and your like health issues, your dark night of the soul, losing your parents, you're losing your home, your husband,
Mhm,
hugs, physical touch.
mhm.
So there's so many ways we can wrap this up. But maybe give us some advice for someone who maybe is listening and they're like, I don't think I'm hugged enough. I'm not touched enough in a consensual way. What is your advice?
Well, I ask them to be brave and ask people in their lives for hugs.
Mm-hmm.
There are hospitals, I don't know where, you'd have to look it up, where you can cuddle babies and hug trees, hug animals,
Oh,
hug
I
your.
love a good hug. I love hugging trees.
Yep, me too. During the pandemic, that's part of what got me through
Hmm.
is hugging trees. And you could feel the energy. If you are so inclined, join free mom hugs. Because there are events all over the country. Start your own, whatever you want to call it. Like we call them hug mobsters, but start your own chapter of a hugging group. I have a friend who I've never met in Chicago who does that. She's collecting hugs. She's asking people to send her a tally. Her name is Carol, and I can't believe I can't remember her last name. I have to look it up for a sec. Hold on. Ah,
It's
yeah,
okay.
that's one of the things that I'm noticing as I'm getting older is sometimes my brain can't remember stuff. Carol C. Miller, and she is again in Chicago, and she asks people she's all about positivity and love and connection, and she asks people to send her, like if you're somewhere where you've hugged 5 people, 10 people, 100 people, let her know. And I think she's looking for something like 100,000 hugs. And I think she's at like I don't know, it's 8,000 or eight. Oh, there we go. Hugometer is 83,941. And the next milestone is 84,000. So I'm thinking she's looking for 100,000, at least 100,000 hugs.
Wow. Well, yes, that's amazing. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. And that's really great advice.
Yeah, yeah,
Go
absolutely.
get your hug on, people.
Yeah, and hug yourself because you're worth hugging, you're worth loving, you're worth connecting with.
When was the last time you hugged yourselves, people?
Yep, I do it every day. I have
You're
to.
doing it while we talk. I love
Yep,
it. I've
yep,
noticed that.
absolutely.
Get your hug on. Edie, thank you so much for joining us. How
Pleasure.
can people get in touch with you? All your links and infos in the show notes, but just for someone
Okay.
driving who's listening to this, that are not going to stop and look at the notes, how can people find you?
My website is www.opti mystical.com. Where that name came from is I had a either dream or meditation where the words, you're not just an optimist, you're an optimistic who sees the world through the eyes of possibility. So optimistical.com. Yay.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for joining us today on the show.
My pleasure.
And thank you to everyone who tuned in to another episode of Resilient AF. Please go hug yourself, hug a tree, hug a friend, hug an animal, hug a stranger. You know what? Let's just all have a big hug.
Group hug.
Group
Hooray.
hug. It's okay to not be okay. You don't
Yep.
have to go through the hard times alone. Let us be that lighthouse in the storm.
Mhm.
We are here with you. And just remember, friends, you are Resilient AF. That's a wrap for another episode of Resilient AF with Blair and Alana. And thank you for listening. Are you feeling inspired to bounce forward?
Let's connect at theglobalresilienceproject.com, where you can read many stories of resilience, buy our books, shop our clothing line, learn more about how to strengthen your resilience muscle, be empowered, and more.
Remember, friends, you are Resilient AF.